Have you ever noticed how a beautiful sunset or maybe just a quiet walk in the woods can suddenly feel incredibly boring?
Oh, yeah.
Or why, after scrolling on your phone for an hour, sitting down to read a physical book just feels unbearably slow?
Right. It's that very specific, almost itchy kind of restlessness.
Yes, exactly. You're sitting there, the sky is gorgeous, the weather is perfect, and your brain is just going, is this it? Like, where's the rest of this stimulation?
Yeah, it's like you're waiting for reality to refresh.
Right. So today, our mission in this deep dive into the source material is to figure out exactly why that happens. We are going to unpack the phenomenon of supernormal stimuli.
Which is such a fascinating concept.
It really is. And just to be clear, the goal here isn't to make you feel guilty about your screen time or, to advocate for moving into the woods to become a monk.
Definitely not.
The goal is to uncover exactly how our biology is being hijacked by the modern world. And, more importantly, how we can strategically reclaim our own motivational system so ordinary life actually feels genuinely satisfying again.
It is a vital mission, really, because we are essentially living in an era of, well, modern magic.
Modern magic, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're navigating the 21st century with these ancient, evolved biological frameworks.
Mm.
Our lizard brains,
Yeah,
basically.
right.
And suddenly, they're being completely overwhelmed by artificial signals. And these signals are meticulously engineered to bypass our natural satiety mechanism.
The internal brakes.
Exactly. The brakes that evolved over millions of years to tell us, hey, you've had enough.
Okay, let's unpack this because to fix the problem, we first need to understand the mechanics of the trap, right? We have to name the monster hiding under the bed.
We do.
So the concept of supernormal stimuli actually originates in evolutionary biology with the ethologist Nicholas Tinbergen. He was working on instinctive behavior.
Right, Tim Bergen made this incredible discovery while he was studying ground nesting birds.
Okay.
He found that if you give a bird a choice between its own natural egg, which is, small, pale, lightly speckled,
A normal egg.
a completely normal egg. If you give it a choice between that and a giant bright blue plaster dummy egg,
Oh, wow.
painted with these massive black polka dots, the bird will actually abandon its real egg.
Wait, really? It chooses the fake one.
It will literally try to incubate the giant fake one, even though it's clearly artificial and, impossible to hatch.
Because the bird's brain is programmed with this really simple heuristic, right? Like bigger and brighter just means better and healthier.
Exactly.
So when it sees the extreme, almost cartoonish version of an egg, its neural circuitry just fires at maximum capacity. It thinks, oh, wow, that is the ultimate egg.
Precisely. The artificial egg is the supernormal stimulus. It triggers the bird's maternal instincts far more powerfully than reality ever could.
That's wild.
And if we translate this to humans, the exact same principle applies. Evolutionarily, our brains are hardwired to seek out three main things for survival:
Which are?
novelty, social connection, and energy-dense foods.
Which makes perfect sense from a survival standpoint. I mean, if our ancestors found a beehive full of sugar or a really fatty animal, they needed a massive neurochemical drive to consume all of it immediately.
Right, because calories were scarce.
Exactly. And if they learned a new piece of information about their environment or strengthened a social bond, it increased their odds of staying alive. So our neurobiology rewards those behaviors with a hit of dopamine.
But the modern world takes those ancient survival instincts and essentially hacks them.
Right.
Take the food industry, for example. We see a heavy reliance on the SOS ratio.
SOS. Sugar, oil, and salt.
You got it. Sugar, oil, and salt. It is not a coincidence that a highly processed potato chip is so hard to stop eating.
It's basically impossible.
Right. Because it's the precise mathematical engineering of those three elements to hit a specific bliss point. It's an artificial flavor profile that simply does not exist anywhere in nature.
So it isolates the exact molecular structures our ancestors would have had to forage days for and just concentrates them into a single bite.
Exactly.
So the potato chip is basically a giant blue polka dot egg.
That is exactly what it is. It bypasses the brain's "I'm full" signal, completely short-circuiting our natural satiety. Because the evolutionary brain assumes we've just stumbled upon a miracle caloric jackpot.
Oh, wow. And we see the exact same biological hack occurring digitally too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Social media algorithms, for instance, are built on the variable reward schedule.
Right, the slot machine effect.
Yes. In behavioral psychology, we know that the brain releases significantly more dopamine in anticipation of a reward when the outcome is uncertain, compared to when a reward is guaranteed.
Which is the fundamental mechanism of a slot machine. Like when you pull down to refresh a feed on your phone, your brain doesn't actually know what it's going to get.
It's exactly.
Will it be a stressful news alert? A funny video? Maybe a notification that someone validated your existence by liking a photo?
Right. It is engineered novelty.
Yeah.
It leverages the brain's dopaminergic error prediction model. We are just constantly hunting for that next unpredictable hit.
But there's a huge cost to this, isn't there? Like a profound physiological tax.
It really is. If our brains are constantly getting hit with the SOS ratio or the algorithmic variable reward, our dopamine system simply isn't built to process that sheer volume of stimulation.
Right, because the brain operates on a model of homeostasis. It always wants to maintain a stable, balanced baseline.
Exactly.
So if we introduce a stimulus that spikes dopamine to, like, 10 times its natural level, the brain goes into a state of toxicity alert.
Yes, the brain is highly adaptive.
Mm-hmm.
So to protect itself from this huge neurochemical flood, it undergoes hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation.
It physically prunes and downregulates its own dopamine receptors. It quite literally turns down its own sensitivity just to survive the onslaught.
You know, it's like turning the volume up so high on your headphones that when you finally take them off at a normal conversation sounds like a whisper.
That is a perfect analogy.
You haven't lost your hearing, but your auditory baseline is completely warped. You've basically deafened your own reward system.
Yes.
And that is exactly why normal life suddenly feels low resolution and gray. The sunset isn't actually boring. Our brains are just temporarily deaf to its subtle, natural reward because they're expecting the volume of a digital slot machine.
Exactly right. And recognizing this physiological reality is crucial because it forces us to reevaluate how we fight back.
Right.
If we know that our dopamine receptors are physically retracting, why do we keep trying to solve the problem by just using more willpower?
We always do that.
Right. Why do we think, I'm just going to try really hard not to scroll tonight, and then an hour later, we're deep in some internet rabbit hole?
Well, because we're constantly told it's a character flaw. Wait, so when I can't put my phone down at 11 p.m. or eat the entire sleeve of cookies, I'm not just inherently weak or lazy?
No, not at all.
Because the immediate internal narrative is always, I lack discipline.
But statistically, you are up against systems built by thousands of the smartest engineers in the world.
Backed by billions of dollars.
Utilizing supercomputers optimized specifically to keep human attention. We have to understand the sheer asymmetry of the battlefield here.
The asymmetry.
You are bringing a biological knife to a nuclear fight.
Wow, a biological knife to a nuclear fight. That paints a picture.
These stimuli are deliberately engineered to overpower your prefrontal cortex, the logical, decision-making part of your brain.
Right.
So acknowledging this asymmetry isn't about making excuses. It's about validating the struggle so we can actually deploy a strategy that works. Self-compassion here is actually a highly strategic tool.
That is a massive paradigm shift. How does dropping the shame and giving ourselves a break actually translate into a strategic advantage?
Because shame physiologically drives the binge cycle.
How so?
Well, when we rely on willpower and inevitably fail, we tell ourselves we're weak.
Well,
This generates a spike in cortisol, the stress hormone. We feel terrible.
okay.
And what does a brain instinctively seek out when it's flooded with cortisol and feels terrible? It seeks comfort. It demands a dopamine-soothing response.
Oh, I see. So we go right back to the supernormal stimulus.
Exactly.
We go back to the hyper-processed food or the algorithmic feed to soothe the pain of failing to resist that exact same stimulus.
It is a closed, completely self-destructive loop. By dropping the shame, we stop the cortisol spike. We break the cycle.
That makes so much sense.
We stop pretending we just need more willpower, and we transition to the actual solution, which is environmental architecture.
Environmental architecture. Because willpower is a finite, highly metabolically expensive resource, right? It drains throughout the day.
But our environment, that is permanent.
Right. So environmental architecture is all about manipulating the activation energy required to perform a habit. We want to design our surroundings so that the healthy, natural choice is the path of least resistance. And the supernormal choice requires an incredibly annoying amount of friction to access.
A great example of this is the out-of-sight rule. It sounds almost too rudimentary, but behavioral economics consistently shows that physical proximity is the strongest single predictor of consumption.
So you don't just try to sit on the couch with your smartphone resting on your leg and just like resist the urge to check it.
No, you place it in another room entirely.
Right.
If the hyper-processed SOS foods aren't in the pantry, You physically cannot consume them when your willpower is depleted at midnight.
And we also see this concept applied brilliantly to digital friction.
Yep.
Take the practice of grayscaling your phone screen.
Yes.
We know from the sources that the visual cortex is tightly linked to the amygdala's threat and reward detection system, right?
It is. Bright, saturated colors, especially reds, they mimic the evolutionary signals of ripe, calorie-dense fruit. Or, on the flip side, blood and danger.
So they demand our attention at a primal level.
Exactly. When you go into your phone settings and turn the screen to black and white, you strip the supernormal color out of your digital life.
You explicitly bypass the amygdala's reward detection.
Those notification red icons lose their psychological lure when they just look like a dull, gray piece of slate. The brain no longer registers them as a high-priority biological target.
Which is the exact same logic behind those boring fire tools, right?
Yeah.
The ones that replace all the shiny app icons with just a plain monochromatic text list.
Exactly right.
Or the logout rule, like making yourself manually type in your email and password every single time you want to check a social feed.
Yes, because that extra 10 seconds of friction isn't just about annoyance. It's about giving your prefrontal cortex enough time to come back online and say, wait, why am I opening this app? Do I actually want to be doing this right now?
It creates a buffer zone between the impulse and the action.
We also see the use of commitment devices.
What are those?
They involve pre-committing to a constraint when your willpower and executive function are high so that you don't have to make a choice later when they are low.
Like using a cash-only budget for the week so you literally cannot overspend.
Right, or setting physical lock boxes for your internet router at night. There's a brilliant maxim from the sources that perfectly summarizes this architectural approach. What is absent requires no willpower.
What is absent requires no willpower. I love that. It really takes the burden off the individual.
It does.
But, okay, let's play this out realistically. We've designed our environment. We put the phone in the kitchen. We threw out the hyper-processed snacks. The visual cues are totally gone.
Okay.
Now we're sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
And we are experiencing intense physical cravings. Like we are bored out of our minds. The walls feel like they're closing in.
Yeah, that happens.
If the environment is clean, how do we actually survive that internal withdrawal?
Well, this is where the physiological recalibration happens. It's often referred to as a dopamine reset or a low-information diet.
Okay.
To get the brain's dopamine receptors to physically upregulate, to grow back and become sensitive to normal stimuli again, we have to go through a period of abstinence.
Like a fast.
Exactly. Often a 24 to 48-hour window of zero non-essential media, no streaming, and no processed inputs.
And we have to be honest here, that initial window is excruciating. The brain is expecting its normal, massive payload of dopamine, and when it doesn't get it, it basically sounds the alarm.
It does. It is deeply uncomfortable. But surviving it requires a massive cognitive reframing of boredom.
Reframing boredom.
Yes. In the modern world, we've been conditioned to view boredom as a void, like an emergency state of understimulation that just must be escaped immediately.
Right.
But biologically, boredom is actually a gateway.
It's the physical sensation of the brain recalibrating its baseline expectation for stimulation, right?
Exactly.
The discomfort of boredom is literally the feeling of the brain's activation threshold lowering back down to a natural level.
It is the necessary restorative bridge we have to cross to get back to enjoying normal life.
But when the acute craving hits, like when every cell in the body feels like it is screaming for that phone or that sugar, we need a real-time tactical response so we don't cave before the baseline resets.
Which brings us to the mindfulness technique of surfing the urge.
Surfing the urge. And what's fascinating here is the neurochemical reality behind it. We tend to view a craving as a permanent command from the brain that will just keep escalating until we obey it.
Right. But biologically, a craving is just a neurochemical spike.
Yeah.
Usually a surge of cortisol and adrenaline pushing us toward the dopamine source.
And those chemicals have a very specific half-life.
They do. If we don't feed the loop by acting on the impulse or panicking about it, the endocrine system actually has to flush those chemicals out.
Wow.
The acute wave of a craving typically peaks and entirely dissipates within 10-20 minutes.
10 to 20 minutes. So instead of viewing a craving as a command you have to obey, you treat it like an ocean wave.
Yes.
The goal isn't to fight the waves, because fighting it just creates more stress and more cortisol. The goal is to sit on the surfboard.
I love that analogy.
We just observe the physical sensations with cognitive distance. We notice, oh, my chest feels tight, my hands are fidgety, my brain is generating intrusive thoughts about opening an app.
You named the sensation.
Right. By saying, this is just my amygdala demanding a familiar neurochemical payload, we take away its power.
Exactly.
We realize that because of its chemical half-life, the wave literally must crash biologically, whether we give in or not. We just have to ride out the 20 minutes.
You're shifting from being an active participant in the craving to a passive observer of your own biology. It creates profound cognitive distance.
Okay, so we've surfed the urge, the wave has crashed, the cortisol has cleared.
You survived it.
I survived, but now I'm just sitting in a silent room, and my brain is still expecting some form of engagement. I mean, I can't just stare at a blank wall forever.
No, you can't.
Suppression alone just creates a behavioral vacuum. If we don't give the brain a healthy reward, aren't we just going to rebound right back to the supernormal stimuli?
That is the exact trap many people fall into. You cannot maintain a behavioral vacuum.
Right.
If you only focus on removing the bad inputs without deliberately adding highly rewarding good inputs, the system will eventually default back to its old pathways.
So what's the solution?
This requires a transition to strategic substitution. We have to replace the empty-calorie artificial stimuli with what we can call high-resolution analog activities.
Right. So we're contrasting the...
And they release dopamine slowly and steadily as a reward for continuous problem solving, which leaves you feeling satiated rather than depleted.
And this framework applies perfectly to our social lives, too. We have to replace the low-resolution digital socializing with real face-to-face connection.
It's vital.
Because getting a digital like on a comment might give you a tiny fleeting microdose of dopamine, but sitting across from a friend, reading their micro-expressions, hearing the cadence of their voice, engaging in synchronized laughter.
That releases oxytocin and serotonin.
Right. It provides deep biological resonance instead of just empty metric validation.
E is about swapping out the artificial hack for the genuine human need it was imitating in the first place. You are fulfilling the evolutionary drive authentically, which actually turns off the craving.
But practically speaking, how absolute does this have to be? Do I have to give up all modern pleasures?
That's a very common concern.
Like, can I never watch a movie on a Friday night or eat a slice of chocolate cake at a birthday party again? Because aiming for total digital asceticism sounds exhausting and honestly unsustainable for most people.
Total restriction usually backfires because it requires permanent willpower. This is why we rely on the 80-20 rule of selective indulgence.
The 80-20 rule.
Right. The goal isn't to be perfectly insulated from the modern world 100% of the time. The goal is to make natural high-resolution stimuli your default state about 80% of your life.
Okay.
That way, when you do engage with a supernormal stimulus, it acts as an occasional contained treat rather than your baseline existence.
So a movie marathon on a rainy Sunday or a dessert at a restaurant is fine as long as it's a conscious choice rather than an automatic compulsion we use to numb out every single night.
Exactly. And when we do choose to indulge in that 20%, we employ the practice of mindful consumption.
Mindful consumption.
Yes. If you are going to eat the highly processed supernormal burger, you do it without simultaneously watching television or scrolling on your phone.
You give the food 100% of your undivided sensory attention.
Exactly. Focus entirely on the flavor, the texture, the physical sensation in your body.
It's fascinating how quickly this breaks the illusion. Like, if we eat junk food while staring at a screen, our brain is distracted and we can consume an endless amount of it.
Absolutely.
But if we sit in silence and actually focus all of our attention on a hyper-processed snack, after 3 or 4 bites, the sensory mismatch becomes glaringly obvious.
You start to taste the raw chemicals.
The excessive salt, the artificiality of it, it's almost overpowering and usually not actually that pleasant.
Because direct, undivided attention exposes the artificiality of the reward. The artificial magic of supernormal stimuli relies on mindlessness.
Right.
It wears off incredibly fast when you actually analyze the input. Your brain quickly realizes, oh, there is no real nutritional density here. This is a trick.
So if we step back and look at the whole picture, what is the end state we are actually striving for here?
That's the big question.
Once we strip away the supernormal stimuli and replace them with high-resolution analog activities, what does that life feel like?
We can look to the ancient Stoics for the perfect term here, ataraxia.
Ataraxia.
It roughly translates to a state of serene calmness, the absence of mental disturbance, or profound tranquility.
The absence of disturbance. I love that. It's the exact opposite of that itchy, restless state we talked about at the very beginning.
By deliberately limiting these hyper-engineered triggers, we realize we aren't actually losing out on anything valuable.
Right.
We are gaining the ability to experience reality as it was meant to be experienced. We're clearing the neurochemical static so we can finally hear the music of ordinary life again.
Let's summarize the mechanics of this journey because we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started by understanding the biological hijack, the reality that our evolutionary reward systems are being manipulated by modern, supernormal stimuli.
From the mathematical SOS ratios in our food to the slot machine variable rewards of our digital feeds.
Right, and we saw how this onslaught literally downregulates our dopamine receptors, making normal life feel incredibly dull.
And from there, we moved away from the guilt and shame of relying on willpower.
We acknowledge the asymmetry of the battlefield. We recognize that to win, we must alter our physical and digital environments to increase friction, making the healthy choice the default path.
Then we broke down the recalibration process.
Embracing boredom as the necessary biological lowering of our activation threshold.
And we learned to surf the urges by understanding the 10 to 20-minute half-life of neurochemical spikes, observing them without feeding them.
And finally, we filled the behavioral vacuum with high-resolution analog substitutions, active creation, genuine real-world connection, and the mindful consumption of our selective indulgences.
It is a comprehensive framework. But as we wrap up this deep dive into the source material, there is one final, incredibly empowering concept that ties all of this together.
What's that?
Identity-based discipline.
Identity-based discipline. That's a powerful phrase. It suggests a complete shift from restriction to alignment.
Exactly.
If we view ourselves as someone who is constantly fighting the urge to do something, we're still expending mental energy. But if we shift the identity itself...
Right. When we rely on rules like, I really shouldn't look at my phone so much, or I can't eat junk food, we are still fundamentally identifying as a person who wants those things, but is punishing or depriving themselves.
It creates internal conflict.
But we shift our core identity.
Yeah.
If we tell ourselves, I am the type of person who lives a high-clarity life, or I am someone who doesn't consume algorithmic entertainment, the behavior naturally follows the new identity.
It completely removes the friction. It's no longer about painful restriction. It's just about acting in natural alignment with who we have decided to be.
Exactly.
We stop fighting the urge because the urge no longer belongs to us.
Precisely. Because, and this raises the ultimate question for everyone to ponder long after this audio stops, whoever controls your stimuli ultimately controls your attention, your behavior, and the trajectory of your future.
The biological reality is undeniable. If we aren't architecting our environment, an algorithm is doing it for us.
So we have to ask ourselves, who is currently in control of your motivational system right now?
Wow.
Is it you, operating with intention and high-resolution focus? Or is it an engineered feed, quietly hijacking your lizard brain? And more importantly, what would your life look like tomorrow if you made the choice to take it back?
What would your life look like if you took it back? I think that is the perfect place to leave it.
I agree.
Because once we recalibrate that baseline, we might just find that a simple walk in the woods, or watching a beautiful sunset, or getting entirely lost in a really good physical book is exactly the deep, sustained thrill our brains were looking for all along.